It was a cloudless morning in Vale, a quiet Nigerian town where time moved slowly and the biggest events were church fundraisers or market brawls over the price of yam. Parents waved goodbye to their children as they boarded rusty school buses, the air filled with laughter and the low hum of life going on. Amara Adeyemi, 8 years old, was the last to leave the compound that morning. She wore her school uniform, sky blue and white, and her favorite red shoes. A birthday gift from her mother. Before we dive into this gripping story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if you love stories packed with mystery and drama, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. There's so much more coming your way. She never made it to school. By noon, panic crept into the Adeyemi household. Her teachers said she never arrived. The police were called. Flyers went up. But in a town where children don't go missing, no one was prepared. By nightfall, all that was found was one of her red shoes, muddy, lying at the edge of a bush path behind the school fence. Inspector Bamidele Musa had seen things. Kidnappings, political hits, ritual killings. But this felt personal. Vale was his mother's hometown. He had visited as a boy. He knew the winding roads, the quiet rivers, the smiles that hid secrets. When he took Amara's file, it was thin. One photo. One shoe. No eyewitnesses. But there were whispers. A gray van. Parked near the school 3 days in a row. A strange woman seen offering sweets to children at the junction. And most chilling of all, another child 2 towns away went missing 2 weeks earlier. Same age. Same red shoes. Coincidence? Or a pattern? Grace Okonkwo wasn't a cop. She was a journalist, and a stubborn one. Founder of the Red Shoes Initiative, a nonprofit that investigated child disappearances, her mission started when her own sister vanished at age 7. She arrived in Vale with nothing but a camera, a battered notebook, and fire in her heart. "This isn't random," she told the inspector. "Red shoes. Young girls. Same profile. Someone is shopping for children." Grace began interviewing locals. Most were silent, afraid. But one woman, a roadside banana seller, said something strange. "I saw her. The girl. That day. A man held her hand. She looked dizzy. Like she was sleepwalking." Grace wrote it all down. Bamidele's investigation led to a CCTV camera, an old, grainy unit above a POS stand across the road from the school. It only captured a few seconds of footage before blacking out. In those seconds, a gray van appeared. License plate blurred. A child figure. A woman in a white scarf. Then static. Bamidele cursed under his breath. "They knew about the camera," he murmured. "They planned this." He ordered roadblocks. Checkpoints. Nothing turned up. No ransom demand. No communication. Just silence. Amara had vanished into thin air. At the local police station, Grace requested to see cold case files. "Why?" the officer asked. "She's not the first?" "No," Grace replied. "She's not even the 5th." She opened the old files herself, cracked folders, dust-covered pages. Over the past 5 years, children had disappeared across neighboring towns. Some had similar features, girls aged 6 to 9. Most poor. Some orphans. Others from families barely surviving. And then one detail connected them all. Every child had worn red shoes on the day they vanished. Coincidence? Or a calling card? A tip came through an anonymous message left at the local church. The school knows more than they're saying. Look into their new social program. Follow the money. Bamidele confronted the school principal, who fumbled through explanations about donor funds, outreach efforts, and helping underprivileged families. But the financial records showed something else. Donations from a group called the Bright Dawn Foundation, based in Lagos. Supposedly a child welfare NGO. Grace tracked their office down. It was abandoned. But a neighbor said something chilling. They came with vans. Took children. Said they were sending them abroad for better education. None of the children ever came back. Grace published a story on her blog titled, "The Girl in the Red Shoes, Nigeria's Hidden Child Trade." It went viral. Suddenly, parents began speaking out. Anonymous tips flooded in. And then came the break. A customs officer at the Seme border saw Grace's article and called her. 3 weeks ago, I saw a van matching your description. Foreign plates. It crossed into Benin Republic. Inside were children. Sleeping or drugged maybe. A girl with red shoes was one of them. They had crossed the border. Amara was no longer in Nigeria. Grace and Bamadiel traveled to Cotonou under aliases. With the help of a local contact, they discovered a safe house run by traffickers, now abandoned. But hidden in a drawer was a notebook. Coded, messy, but names and dates stood out. And one message in French. Shipment number 4, girl in red shoes, prepare for transfer to Europe. Amara was being moved again. The clock was ticking. And she wasn't the only one. With Interpol's help, a raid was carried out at a warehouse near the Cotonou docks. Inside were crates filled with expired food packages, and one crate that had fresh fingerprints. Behind it, a false wall. There, in a dark room, they found 6 children. Confused. Alive. Amara wasn't among them. But one of the girls whispered, they said she was special. They took her early. She had bright shoes. I heard them say she was going to the farm. Grace froze. She knew what that meant. The farm was real. And it was worse than anyone imagined. Grace Okonkwo was not new to trauma. Long before Idvale, there was Ibadan, a city where she lost her younger sister, Ngozi. She was only 9 when she disappeared from their compound. Grace was 12. She had begged to take her sister to the store. Their mother said no. Ngozi vanished while playing with her doll under a mango tree. They never found her. The guilt had buried itself deep inside Grace. She chased journalism not for fame, but for answers. Every lost child was her sister. Every unanswered case, a wound reopened. When she first heard of Amara's case, it was as if Ngozi whispered from the grave, "Don't let this one disappear." The children rescued from Cotonou were kept in a safe house managed by the Red Shoes Initiative. Slowly, under the care of trauma experts, they began to talk. A boy named Farouk, age 11, spoke of being shipped in the back of a coal truck. A girl named Zainab cried for hours before whispering about the man who always wore gloves, Uncle Dada. Grace recorded hours of these testimonies, their voices a haunting melody of broken innocence. But one story stood out, a girl named Loveth, who said she remembered a lady with red lipstick giving her biscuits at the school gate. Grace's stomach turned. The story matched a known community worker in Idvale, Ms. Clara Abiola, headmistress of St. Simon's Academy. Ms. Clara Abiola was loved in Idvale. A widow, a church leader, a woman who ran orphan drives. But when confronted, she broke. First denial, then fury, then silence. It took months, but Grace uncovered financial links between Clara and the offshore accounts. She was the recruiter, targeting vulnerable children, especially orphans and those with struggling families. Her kindness was the perfect cover. She was arrested and jailed. The town erupted in protests. Some defended her. Others were ashamed for ever trusting her. The man in the gray van had become a ghost. But an anonymous tip led Grace to a border town near Badagry. There, she found a man named Kunnel, missing teeth, a twitch in his left eye, and a stutter. He was no mastermind, just a pawn. But he confessed to transporting dozens of children. He described how they sedated the kids with spiked juice, wrapped them in blankets, and took them to the Lagos warehouse. He provided names, codes, drop points, and finally, a chilling statement: some go to Cotonou, some go where no one comes back. Interpol joined the case. Grace, now hailed as a global hero, traveled to Belgium with Amara's photo in hand, searching ports, hospitals, foster homes. There, they found files of children smuggled into Western Europe. Not all survived. Some were used for forced labor, others for worse. But a new name emerged, El Patron, a faceless figure running the European wing of the child ring. Though young, Amara was determined to testify. Her therapist prepped her gently. On the stand, she clutched her red shoes and said, "They called me number 8. But my name is Amara. I want to go home." The courtroom went silent. Her testimony convicted 3 more suspects. It also led to the reinvestigation of dozens of closed cases. Amara became a symbol, not just of survival, but of justice. At 16, Amara began writing under a pseudonym, Little Fire. Her stories revealed what it felt like to be sold, forgotten, and found. Her blog gained attention. Survivors began writing to her. One post read, "My name is Elijah. I was in the same room as you. I saw you. I remember your red shoes." That one message reignited an entire thread of cases. Amara, now a youth activist, joined Grace's foundation full-time. Together, they trained volunteers, offered scholarships, and hunted down forgotten leads. Grace received a tip from Austria. El Patron would be attending a private fundraiser in Vienna under a false identity. With Interpol's help, she went undercover as a wealthy Nigerian donor. There, she met the man, real name Alain Dubois. French, wealthy, smiled like a snake. She wore a wire. The moment he said, "Some African kids don't have parents. We give them purpose," the trap was closed. He was arrested. 42 children were freed across Europe. Years passed. Grace returned to Vale for a memorial, not for the lost, but for the found. Families gathered, children now in school, thriving. The town, once stained by silence, now rang with music and laughter. Amara unveiled a statue at the town square, a little girl in red shoes, holding a lantern. "Light," she said, "is what they feared. That's why we must never stop shining it." Grace's book became an international bestseller. Her story inspired documentaries, policy changes, and education reforms. Amara started the Little Fire Academy, a center for healing and empowerment for rescued children. And the red shoes? They now sat in a museum case in Lagos, with the inscription, "She walked into darkness, but never lost her way." Grace receives a letter one morning. No return address. Inside, a photograph of a child. A name. A location in Senegal. No words. Just a whisper across time, "One more." Grace picks up her pen. Amara closes her laptop. Bamidil books a flight. The hunt begins again.